Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing this today? I hope everyone is doing well. It is Tuesday, September 15th, and we are going to go over the news as usual, even though this channel just got started. Anyway, want to apologize in advance for not being able to do a video yesterday and not being able to do regular videos going forward. I know I initially said I wanted to try and do videos every day, but after yesterday, I had to go because I still have a day job. I had to go into the office yesterday, and by the time I left and came all the way back home, and I had just like a ton of stuff I had to do once I got home. I honestly didn't get a chance to sit down and actually do anything until like almost 5 o'clock, and by that time dinner was being made, and I was just like, I don't have time for anything. Don't have time for anything when I actually have to go into work. And I understand that, hey, that's just a part of life, but it really does suck. So especially when I can do my job virtually, but apparently nobody cares about that. So during this whole lockdown thing, I've been able to do 100% of my work remotely here at home without any problems, and I still am being forced to go into the office a handful of days a week, which is mildly annoying, but it is what it is. I wouldn't care so much if the office wasn't in the city, a very large city. Let's just put it at that. Anyway, I hope everyone has their coffee because we do have a lot of news to go over. So with that being said, good old black coffee for this morning here. Anyway, first and foremost is the most breaking news over the past 8 hours. Trump issues stark warning to Iran after reports country is considering plot to assassinate U.S. ambassador. Officials have been reportedly aware of threats against the ambassador since the spring. So this is obviously a very huge story coming out of Iran. Obviously, this is in retaliation to our airstrike that killed Soleimani, and whatever your thoughts are on that, what's done is done. There's no going back now. This person was obviously a terrorist who was basically hiding behind the fact that he was part of the Iranian military, responsible for many deaths of U.S. servicemen overseas. You can throw all your arguments about whether we should have been over there in the first place out the window, because those arguments, they're just not arguments at this point. We're over there. We've been over there. Yes, we should be coming home. But the fact of the matter is we're over there, and the only thing we can deal with is what's true and what's fact, and that's right now. So all of those hypothetical arguments, I hate having those arguments because it doesn't deal with anything that's actually happening in real time. So basically, this was an assassination plan to be carried out on Lena Marks, who is the U.S. ambassador to South Africa. So this is really big. This is really big, and of course, Trump is putting out the threats nice and early. So this is going to be something worth paying attention to. So we'll see where this goes. Hopefully this just dies down as Iran doing its usual barking at the world. So we'll see what happens. This is something that we're going to have to just keep an eye on over the next few days and see if anything comes of it. I don't think it will. I think this is just going to be something that it's going to be tough. It's going to be interesting to see how the mainstream media spins this, even Fox News, how they would spin it. This is obviously, and I know a lot of people are probably going to say, oh, you just you just go on Fox News. You just go on Fox News. You don't go on any other news sites. I'm like, well, we all pretty much know what the other news sites are going to be talking about and how they're going to be writing their articles. There's really no point in reading them just to bash them. We already know how they're going to spin things. And Fox News, for all of their faults, they do a pretty good job of reporting, and I will call them out whenever I get the chance, because even they are not immune to having their terrible takes. I mean, just look at Chris Wallace. He's probably one of the most insufferable, unliked people on Fox News, in my opinion. And that is a very biased opinion of mine. I do not like Chris Wallace. I do not think it's just the fact he's been there for so long. It's impossible to get rid of him. So, with that being said, we can move on. This is something that we do want to keep an eye on. Now, the second, probably biggest news story of the day or of the week so far, and this is from 2 hours ago, but this is something that happened over the weekend. So everybody knows about the Pennsylvania man who was shot, who was basically going to attack a police officer with a knife. So the sister has spoken out and saying that she was trying to get him help. He was off his meds, and she was the one who called the police. He was incoherent and acting out when she called the police. So those of you who don't know, of course, there have been massive riots in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, because, you know, it's bad enough that the man was a minority, but, you know, also apparently we need to be rioting and defunding police over shooting a person who is literally out of their mind and going to try and attack a police officer with a knife. So, see, the sister of the knife-wielding Lancaster, Pennsylvania man shot dead by cops said Monday that he was bipolar, schizophrenic, and off his medication, and that she was trying to get mental help aid when she called authorities. So let's just be clear about this. This person was, for lack of better words, crazy and off their medication, and we all know where that leads to bad things, and it's unfortunate. But we had something that we don't. This is one of those things that it's like it was the worst case scenario, and of course, calling the police. I mean, when they were, if this person was willing to take a knife and attack a police officer, who knows what they were capable of any citizen, like normal person. So, yeah, obviously they wanted to get him some help, but at that point, I mean, see, this is where in Joe Biden's America and the far left's America, they would dispatch social workers to this scene. How do you think that would have turned out? I ask this honestly. Think about this. You send a bunch of social workers there, not police, unarmed, quote unquote, community helpers, you know, to this situation, which is something that's being floated. I mean, that's no doubt about it. This is something that they want to implement. How do you think that's going to go? This person, at the sight of any type of authority, immediately grabbed a knife and then just went after them. I don't see this act playing out any different in that scenario, because obviously this woman was concerned. The sister was concerned enough to call the police because this person, their brother, was acting out, incoherent, and was off their medication. I mean, all signs point to a bad thing. Now, a lot of people, of course, the biggest thing is, you know, oh, why do cops always have to shoot someone, blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, there is actual training in police when it comes to dealing with suspects within close range when they have a knife. Cops would rather deal with somebody having a gun than having a knife, because a gun, there are a lot of things that can happen. The gun can jam, the gun could not fire, they could miss. The cops wear bulletproof vests, so they could always get hit in the vest, which isn't fun, mind you. It's like being hit by like 100-mile-per-hour baseball, like it maybe even worse than that. But there is the bulletproof vest. There's a lot of things that you can do with someone who has a gun, because if someone who has a gun, they're not going to charge you, so you can try and negotiate with somebody who has a gun. When someone has a knife and they're charging at you, there's nothing that's going to protect you. It'll cut right through that bulletproof vest. Now, this is called the Tueller drill. Now, I did pull this up. Now, there have been articles written about the Tuller drill and all that stuff. I don't care to go into all of that. I just want to bring this up as a point of fact. Tuller drill is a self-defense training exercise to prepare against a short-range knife or melee attack when armed only with a holstered handgun. Sergeant Dennis Tuller of the Salt Lake City Police Department wondered how quickly an attacker with a knife or other melee weapon could cover 21 feet, 6.4 meters, so he timed volunteers as they raced to stab the target. He determined that it could be done in 1.5 seconds. That's 1.5 seconds a police officer has to make a decision. Not only about the person in front of them, but their own lives as well. These results were first published as an article in SWAT magazine in 1983 and in a police training video by the same title, How Close is Too Close? Defender with a gun has a dilemma. If he shoots too early, he risks being accused of murder. If he waits until the attacker is definitely within striking range so there is no question about motives, he risks injury and even death. The Tuller experiments quantified a danger zone where an attacker presented a clear threat. The Tuller drill combines both parts of the original time trials by Tuller. There are several ways it can be conducted. So basically, it's all about timing and yeah. So even MythBusters covered this. I just had to read it because this was this last part I didn't read. I had only gotten down to this part. So MythBusters covered the drill in the 2012 episode Dual Dilemmas. At 20 feet, 6.1 meters, the gun wielder was able to shoot the charging knife attacker just as he reached the shooter. At shorter distances, the knife wielder was always able to stab prior to being shot. Now, anybody who's ever had to unholster a gun without training knows that it's not the smoothest transition, even with the best holsters. It's not always the smoothest transition. But with proper training, you can get pretty quick with your holster. I, for one, I worked in security, armed security, and the holsters that we had the little latch, the buckle that you had to unclip before you were able to pull your gun out. So that was like an extra step that you had to take if you were ever going to pull your gun. So this is just something to keep in mind, that police are trained for stuff like this. And when you see the video, when you see the body cam footage, it's horrifying. Of course, they don't have it here, but the body cam footage, gosh, I'd have to actually go back to Fox News right here. You can see here, this was the point where the officer drew their weapon and fired. You can see the size of that knife is pretty substantial. You can see the blade is this. You can see the blade, how long it is. This right here, this is almost within arm's reach. So there is no question that this police officer, and when you actually watch the video, the cop tried to run away and then turned, and this is where they were when they turned and pulled their weapon. This is completely and 100% justified. Is it right? Well, that's a philosophical and moral question right there. It's never right to kill somebody. But in some cases, it's the only decision you have, and you have to make it. This person right here, the police officer, who knows? Maybe they have a family. Maybe they're a husband and they have 2 kids. Maybe they have 1 kid. Maybe they have a baby on the way. Maybe he's engaged. Maybe he has a girlfriend he wants to marry someday. Maybe he's a veteran who has a wife and older children and maybe grandchildren. We don't know. So these are things that all of these officers take into account like that because they have to. They are trained to make these decisions. But in their subconscious, they're thinking, I really want to go home and kiss my wife tonight. I really want to go home and see my kids, So this is why cops make these decisions sometimes. They're thinking about themselves just as much as the victim, just as much, if not more, than the person charging them with a knife. Now, are there unjustified cop shootings? Of course, there's always going to be that. But most of the time, there is something that triggers a response from the officer to draw their weapon and actually fire. Now, in this instance that we're talking about, because we could talk about this all day. We can debate this all day. This is clearly justified. The riots, however, completely unjustified and shows exactly just how far these people are willing to take things. So, and that leads me to my next article that I want to talk about, which in turn will lead me to my overall message, which is in the description. So here we have Los Angeles Sheriff Alex Villanueva challenges LeBron James to match reward money for gunmen who ambushed 2 deputies in Compton. Quote, I'll be very curious to see what his response is, if any. So we all have heard this. This is, and I've seen the video. It is hard. It's hard to watch. It's gut wrenching. And then the picture, I can't show it on YouTube. I would probably, this channel in the eyes of YouTube doesn't even exist, but I can guarantee you it would for real not exist if I were to show the picture. But I've seen the picture of a bystander who took of the 2 sheriffs who actually got out of their vehicle, and I'll tell you, they are some tough SOBs. And the female officer, I don't know if they are going to show her name. God, Fox, I'm sick and tired of their autoplay videos. Here you can see the still image here. They were just in their cruiser when this horrible person just came up and tried to execute them. And there is the perpetrator right about to fire. So they don't have the picture of the female officer, but she was in the picture. You can see blood just pouring out of her mouth. She's standing up, looking like she's almost in a daze. Around behind a pillar, you can see like the hand of like the other officer. It's covered in blood, and she applied a tourniquet to him while she had her own injuries. She was able to radio for help. I mean, it's just, it's like something out of like something you'd see like in a movie or something. It's just unbelievable. So speaking with, said more money reached $175,000, a combination of donations of $100,000 from the county and $75,000 from 2 private individuals, which is great. It's great to see that from 2 private individuals that's willing to put up the money in a place like, LA, in Los Angeles. So this challenge is to LeBron James. I want you to match that and double that reward. I know you care about law enforcement. You expressed a very interesting statement about your perspective on race relations and on officer-involved shootings and the impact that it has on the African-American community. And I appreciated that. But likewise, we need to appreciate that respect for life goes across all professions. I agree. So, let's see. So that's pretty much the gist of this article. Is just that the officer is challenging LeBron James to match the reward. I don't really see the point in that. I would just let the media and the public press on, rich athletes and movie stars to comment on these types of things. But I see what the sheriff is doing, trying to bring about some kind of dialogue between all platforms to try and put an end to this stuff. And, me as a pessimist sometimes will say that I don't think there is any end in sight, especially coming up on election. But, the human race will definitely surprise everyone, as they did with this situation. But as of right now, I've heard that the 2 sheriffs are still recovering in ICU, and I hope they get better. Again, like this is going to roll into a bigger message that I have towards the end of this video. Next thing here is actually something good, some good news. So Laura Ingraham announced on her show, this was all over news yesterday, but she praises federal judge's phenomenal ruling finding Pennsylvania's COVID shutdown, quote, unconstitutional. Our constitutional rights may not be indefinitely abridged by executive fiat, period. That's what Laura Ingraham quoted as saying on her show. So Western Pennsylvania District Judge William Stickman IV, a Trump appointee, they had to throw that in there, wrote in a 66-page opinion that while, it was going to be brought out, by other mainstream media outlets, I guarantee you there were probably already hit pieces written about this person being a Trump appointee and talking about how they're science deniers and blah, 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 blah. They're trying to undermine blah, 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 blah. You can already see. It's like people, because of the mainstream media like CNN and MSNBC and all these other places like the Huffington Post, these other hack journalist websites, it's almost given people a sense of foresight to be able to predict what's about to be written by these other sites before they even write it. And it's true 100% of the time. And as I just stated, you're probably already hearing this stuff on other sites. I guarantee you. So Western Pennsylvania District Judge William Stickman IV, a Trump appointee, wrote in a 66-page opinion that while Wolf and Secretary of Health Rachel Levine may have acted with, quote, the good intention of addressing a public health emergency, the, quote, liberties protected by the Constitution are not fair weather freedoms, according to Harrisburg's Penn Live news outlet. Quote, so that's just a Laura Ingraham quote. I'm more interested in the actual ruling. Courts had consistently rejected challenges to Wolf's power to order businesses to close during the pandemic, and the governor has since lifted many of the restrictions, allowing businesses to reopen and canceling a statewide stay-at-home order. Let's see. It violated the First Amendment right of assembly, the Due Process Clause, and the Equal Protection Clause, 14th Amendment. The ruling was celebrated by many in the state legislature's GOP majority, with State Senator Doug Mastriano, a retired Army colonel and vocal Wolf critic, writing on social media that the governor's, quote, abuse of power to do this has been condemned by the federal judge as a violation of your freedoms. Choose to walk as free people. So I am 100% in support of this, and I'm just like, great. Can we do this nationwide now? Can we get more rulings on this across the country? Because this needs to spread, and it needs to spread quickly. Otherwise, we're going to be stuck in this endless loop for God knows how long. Because I don't need to tell you that everybody is saying, according, even Dr. Fauci saying, we may never return to normal. Handshakes are a thing of the past. We may not be getting back to normalcy as in pre-COVID until near the end of 2021. Like, what on earth? Where can you make that? How can you make that assumption? I don't care if you're a doctor. That's just stupid in my opinion. You can't force a country to live like half a life, live life halfway in this country just because you're scared of, just because you're scared of a virus that's mostly, for lack of better terms, under control. It's not 100% under control, but for the most part, we never ran out of hospital beds. We never ran out of ventilators. We mobilized all of our resources. It was incredible the way we did things. 2 hospital ships in New York and in California. It was just incredible what we were able to do. It's horrible what we saw in the loss of life and across the world, but that's just that's just life. I understand that's a bit insensitive, but people die every day. It's just a fact, People get sick, and of course, due to certain decisions, looking at the governor of New York, people may have died earlier than they should have. It's just a fact. Now, but this is what happens when pandemics arise. We're not going to be able. No one is able to save everybody. People need to realize this. During a pandemic, you can't save everybody. There are going to be deaths. The fact that we are still, to this day, under 200,000 deaths is nothing short of a miracle. As bad as they were saying that this was, The fact that we have, like, I don't know, I forget how many cases we're at, but I know we're under 200,000 deaths. Any death is one too many. But we have to come to the realization that the fact of the matter is you can't save everybody. There are going to be deaths. There are going to be loss of life. The only thing you can control is how well you can protect the people and how much of the spread you can control. That's it. Then you just have to roll with the punches and do your best to just try and keep everybody safe. And everybody who gets sick, you do your best to keep them comfortable and get them the best care that they can receive. And then you have to, that's it. And then work on developing a vaccine. The world ain't, I mean, this is from Rocky Balboa. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place. And the sooner people can come to that realization, the better we'll be able to handle these types of situations. And I'm probably going to get blasted for this, but I mean, that's just my 2 cents. We've come to the point now where we've gone from flattening the curve to stay inside until we get a vaccine. It's just no way to live. It's just no way to live. It's the plot of every single dystopian future movie and book that you can possibly think of. Now, if anybody wants to see what a real pandemic looks like, watch the movie Contagion and then ask yourselves, are we near that point? If you come away with that with the answer of no, then we should return to a normal life. It's time to move on. It's time to get back to our lives. It's time to go back to work. And again, I'm getting off on a rant here, but this is coming from somebody who has spent a lot of time at home. All right, next story. Bipartisan lawmakers offer coronavirus relief solution in effort to break logjam. Another $1.5 trillion on the credit card, Mr. President. So, look, I understand people are out of work. People need assistance. I get that. I was, begrudgingly in agreement with the first care package, stimulus, whatever. I was a recipient of it. It helped. I didn't need it, but it helped. It definitely helped cover some bills and give me a little bit of extra, money. I'm still working. I haven't missed a day of work during this whole thing. But, it helped. So, a bipartisan group of House lawmakers Tuesday unveiled a compromise coronavirus package that worked out some of the thorniest divisions between Democrats and Republicans in an effort to jumpstart relief to Americans still reeling from the health and economic crisis. The Problem Solvers Caucus, released its $1.5 trillion coronavirus plan as proof bipartisanship is still afoot and to deliver a prepackaged solution to Republican and Democratic leadership that would meet the nation's most pressing needs for the next 6 to 12 months. All right, so let's see. Spread having killed more than 193,000 Americans. You compare that to the projections and how scary this virus was in the very beginning. I'll admit, I got a little nervous too in the very beginning. But once I started, reading more, not going to mainstream media for my initial take, and then actually reading, researching, and then listening to what these, quote unquote experts had to say, and then just seeing the results, I was like, well, okay, this is bad, but it's not end of the world, Anyway. So the 50-member caucus, equally divided between Democrats and Republicans, spent 6 weeks trying to blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So what I want to know, okay, among the highlights of the one ahead, this is what I was going to just say. I want to know what's in it. $120 billion for enhanced unemployment aid through January 2021 at a rate of $450 weekly payments for an 8-week transition period until states can reconfigure to the new system that would provide up to $600 weekly, but not to exceed 100% of the previous wage. All right. I mean, I get it. I mean, I've heard some horror stories out of some people that live in California Why anybody would still live in California is beyond me. I mean, if you really are that stuck, dude, just sell everything and move to a neighboring state like Arizona or Idaho or somewhere, and just find the first job that you can get, and then just work. That's what I would do. If I lived in California and I was going through this and I was left with nothing, like virtually nothing, I would literally sell everything I couldn't fit into my car, or no, basically sell everything that I didn't need. And this is coming from somebody who's done that twice in their life. I've packed up and sold everything I could not fit into my car, and I've relocated to 2 different states. I've relocated to one state here on the East Coast, and then I relocated out west, and then I am now back on the East Coast. And both times, I was able to get back on relatively speaking, get back on my feet. More so in Arizona than I did my first time I did that. But when you're older and wiser, when you relocate, you're much better at adapting to your new situation. Anyway, that's what I would do. If I lived in California, I would be like, to hell with this fucking state. I know I've been trying to refrain from cursing, but I would be like, screw this place. I'm leaving. I'm going somewhere where I can actually work a decent job and, not have to worry about going outside without, being stopped by the police asking if I have reason to be outside of my apartment. Do you have reason to be out of your dwelling, citizen? Anyway, next one, $500.3 billion in state and local aid, which includes $130 billion for documented coronavirus state and local expenses through 2021, $120.3 billion for documented local budget shortfalls, and $250 billion for proven state government shortfalls. Okay, that's cool that they write proven and documented into these things, but we all know that's never going to be 100% enforced. There's going to be mismanagement when it comes to this much money. I can give an example. I know teachers in the county in which I live did not get a pay raise because of this shutdown. But you know what they did? They spent their money elsewhere on like additional school bus drivers for the entire county because reasons. Because here's the reason. Here's why. Because they plan on going back to school, but they haven't decided yet if they are actually going back to school this year. But they've already spent the money on these other bus drivers. And then they refuse to give all the teachers their raise that they were supposed to get this year. Where's the fairness in that? Because in my opinion, the teachers are the ones doing all the frickin' work. And they're the ones who are having to suffer the most. On top of the kids, I know the kids have to adjust to this as well. But, you tell me if you want to get on a Zoom call and teach a bunch of first graders for 8 hours. I'm all ears for volunteers. $200 billion for another round of direct stimulus checks worth $1,200 for adults and $500 for children. Dependent adults would also qualify for money until this plan. Come on, what? That makes no sense. So cool, more money. Printer go Bert. Just send more money. I'm sure this makes all the socialists giddy with joy. I'm sure Andrew Yang is all for this. $290 billion for small business and nonprofit assistance. I don't like the nonprofit part because there's a reason they're called nonprofit. They're not supposed to make any money. They're supposed to raise the money themselves, not get it from the federal government, including $240 billion for another round of Paycheck Protection Program funds and $50 billion for a targeted employment retention tax credit. This part I agree with. Protecting small businesses. That's probably the only thing I'm interested in when it comes to this stuff, because all of this other crap can be avoided if you just let people go back to work. Just open the damn state. Let people go back to their jobs. If people are that freaking scared of going back to work, then let them take unemployment. But you have to like have reasons, but outside of, oh, I'm just scared of getting the virus. Okay, why are you scared? Oh, I'm just scared. Go back to work. But if you have like diabetes, or you have a heart condition, or you have like a severe respiratory condition like severe asthma, I totally get that. Stay home, collect unemployment. But don't just freaking hand out money to people who are still working. Like, I don't need this. I don't need this. But I'm gonna get it. And I know there's gonna be tons of other people who don't need it who are going to get it. But like, since obviously they're not gonna do the smart thing and just let people go back to work, then sure, I agree with this. And I guess I agree with this. There's just so much. Again, I'm going into the hypothetical argument, but it's really not hypothetical, because all this can be done tomorrow. Let people go back to work. I'm getting sick and tired of these ads. Changing my position on this. Anyway, last thing here: new automatic triggers in the legislation that would provide an additional $400 billion boost through another round of stimulus checks in March 2021. What? See, this is how you know this is not ending anytime soon, because they're already putting this into the bill for later next year. This is ridiculous. This is insane. This is how you know this isn't going anywhere. This is how you know this isn't going anywhere. And, if somebody else wins the election, it's definitely not going anywhere anytime soon. And I would say stock up and prepare for the long haul. Yeah, and that's where I'll get into a few things regarding that. This is something I'm really glad the president called out. Trump says, quote, if quote, weak Biden can vote in person, quote, any American can do it. Trump has said mail-in voting is rife with fraud. Well, that's just a fact. I'm not going to hear any argument otherwise. But yes, I agree. Quote, did you see where Joe Biden, I'll just read the tweet directly. Did you see where Joe Biden, as weak, tired, and sleepy as he is, went to a polling place today in Delaware, of course, to vote? If Biden can do it, any American can do it. I agree, 100%. 100%. Same as he said, if you can riot in person, you can vote in person. Another thing pertaining to our great election, Biden's energy plan could wipe out 5 million blue-collar jobs. Former vice president can't get story straight on green energy promises. This is from Fox Business. As you can say, stock market's up a little bit. Anyway, Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden just can't get his story straight. In Pittsburgh, in front of union workers last month, he declared, I am not banning fracking. Let me say that again. I am not banning fracking, no matter how many times Donald Trump lies about me. But that is far from what he was saying earlier this year. During a March Democratic primary debate exchange between Senator Bernie Sanders, Vermont, and he's not an independent, he's a Democrat, Democratic socialist, basically the same thing nowadays. Sanders started by saying, quote, I'm talking about stopping fracking as soon as we possibly can. I'm talking about telling the fossil fuel industry that they are going to stop destroying this planet. No ifs, buts, and maybes about it. So am I, Biden replied. Really makes you think. Really gets the noggin jogging. How many times have we heard politicians say one thing and then say another? Make all these promises. After that famous Biden-Sanders debate, the Biden campaign issued a retraction, meaning this isn't really what the former vice president meant to say. Really, I feel like he was off script and actually said it. I mean, whatever. And admittedly, he's older. He loses his train of thought. Blah blah blah. So it's like either side of their argument is bad. Either he didn't really mean to say that. It's like, well, he said it. Are you saying that he really? And he's older. He loses his train of thought. That's where all of these things come in. And then there's the also, well, is he a liar? Is he just trying to mislead the American people? How can we trust him? How can we trust the people that is in his campaign? But what is unambiguous and in big, bold writing in the Biden Buy America plan is his signature pledge to the climate change crusaders to end fossil fuel use in America by 2035. This, of course, is a de facto ban on fracking, because if we aren't going to use the energy, why would anyone drill for it? That is a beautiful question for someone to answer. That Biden zero carbon emissions target requires a glide path to no fossil fuel production and consumption 15 years from now, given that we currently get about 80% of our energy from oil, gas, and coal, according to Daniel Yergin, a world expert on blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, we already know where this is going to go, and God, this is another extremely long video. I'm going to start wrapping up here. Basically, what the main gist of this video is I want to get to is voting, okay, this election. And I want to start by saying, if you are one of those people who doesn't vote, if you're one of those people who doesn't vote, never votes, says there's no point in voting, they're all corrupt, they're all liars, they're all blah, 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 and you just don't vote, I want to say to you that I have no respect for you. I'm sorry. You lose all credibility in your arguments because you clearly don't stand for anything. You clearly don't even want to take part in the democratic process when clearly there is a very huge defining choice this year in this election. Now, after everything we've covered today, the choice is clear. For all of his faults, Donald Trump is the incumbent, and there really is no question that he has done some very good things in office. He's improved. Well, prior to this whole situation, the economy was the best it's ever been. He's pulling out of the Middle East. That's a fact. He's negotiated several peace deals between some very, very adversarial countries, and he's basically trying to get rid of a lot of programs and things going on behind the scenes that are just bogging this country down. Now, do people not like him? Of course. Are people going to riot if he gets reelected? Most likely. But here's the thing. If he gets reelected and he's in for 4 more years, he can't get reelected, that's when I think some real work is going to get done. And that's when I think there will be a zero tolerance for rioting. Peaceful protests, fine. You want to stand outside the White House with a freaking, bunch of signs and just jump up and down and say we don't like you, fine. Do that. Many people have done that. But if you're going to start attacking police officers, wear, face, like conceal your face and your identity, and, torch things, light buildings on fire, smash police cars, attack citizens, yell and berate, members of Congress while they're walking down the street, as you're directed to do so by people like Maxine Waters, then there's zero tolerance in a second term. That's what I believe. That's my perspective on things. President Trump already alluded to that in an interview with Judge Jeanine. Now, the reason why I don't have any respect for people who aren't voting is because this is the most important election in my lifetime, and probably in a very long time. This is a clear-cut choice between law and order and total chaos and restructuring of America to a country that's not America anymore. Biden has some horrible plans. He's not going to be in control. He's not. He's going to be just a shell. He's going to be just a figure piece to march out in front of the media every day while everyone else is working behind the scenes on changing this country for the worst. Now, if you can agree that Joe Biden is a bad candidate, should not be president, the people he surrounds himself with are bad for America, but you still are not going to bring yourself to vote, I just am at a loss for words. I don't understand you. And I think you are part of the problem. I have more respect for people who publicly say they will vote for Joe Biden and actually do it, because at least they stand for something. Someone who doesn't vote, even if they recognize the problems that the far left are doing to this country, and they still decide not to vote, they're part of the problem. You are part of the problem. And I'm sorry to say it, but it just needs to be said. Stand for something. Stand for something. I don't care what it is. You'll have my respect for it because at least you're willing to stand up and say, okay, I stand for this. Rather than sit back and try and be that person leaning against a fence like, yeah, I don't care. It's all like, that means you don't care about the future of this country because you're like, well, I'm not going to be around long enough. That's an incredibly selfish way of looking at things, and that's exactly the reason why this country will fall apart. Because people like you don't see the benefit in actually doing something to preserve this country in the long run. All you think about is yourself and what's going on right now, and you think that you can outlive the transformation of this country. And as long as you can do that, you're totally fine of not doing anything and living in your bubble and just making sure that you still got your things that you like to do unimpeded. Well, I got news for you. It's going to happen faster than you think. It's going to happen a lot faster than you think. And your friends, your children, if you have children, your children's children, if you have grandchildren, are going to be the ones that have to suffer through it. And you might witness it. And I hope that you have that regret. I hope that you do. I hope you have that regret a few years from now, and you're looking at things. If things go for the worst, if this election turns for the worst, I hope you have that regret that you're laying there and you're going, oh my God, I should have voted. I should have tried to make a difference. And you didn't. Now, you can still change things. Go and vote. Go and vote. I don't care who you vote for. I mean, I would strongly urge you to consider voting for Donald Trump. I'll never tell somebody who to vote for. I can give you reasons why to vote for one person and to not vote for another. But ultimately, it's your choice. But there has never been a more clear choice for this country. And I can't have respect for somebody who doesn't vote. I mean, and this is coming from somebody who didn't vote for a long time. But now, as I've gotten more politically involved, I can see now you have to vote. It all matters. It all matters. And that is something that nobody talks about enough. Everything you do matters. See, people who don't want to vote and say, oh, the system's just rigged, I don't want to vote, it's all corrupt, blah, blah, blah. That's someone who's not willing to take responsibility. If you want to actually believe that your life has meaning, then believe that everything you have got to be kidding.
And I'm part of the team building
Shut the my God. Just never ends. All right. We'll just end that rant there. So last two things I'll bring up to kind of end on a middle ground. Battle against Oregon wildfires fought with short supply of air support after 6 Chinooks sent to Afghanistan. Why are they in Afghanistan? Because reasons. Hence why the president is trying to get all of our troops out of the Middle East, which means these helicopters wouldn't frickin' be there to begin with. And then, of course, this was just something I thought was really cool. An M109 Paladin 155mm howitzer made history recently by shooting down a fast-moving, maneuvering cruise missile with a hypervelocity projectile able to travel at speeds up to Mach 5. That is awesome, in my opinion. Being able to shoot down cruise missiles with a howitzer on the ground, that's amazing. That is amazing. So. And of course, last but not least, University of Pittsburgh scientists discover antibody that neutralizes virus that causes COVID-19. Its component is 10 times smaller than a full-sized antibody. This is something I'm really looking forward to, and I hope we get more coverage on this. Yeah, I hope it gets put into mass use if they can duplicate these, studies, of course. Anyway, that's all for today. I've been going on for way too long. I need more coffee, and I got more work to do. Anyways, if you enjoyed, please consider hitting the like button, subscribing to the channel if you want more content like this, and leaving comments in the comment section down below to continue the conversation. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see everyone later. God bless America. Have a great day.